Hello and welcome to Olympus Mons Tutorials. Hello ClawQuest, hello J Melon, it's good to hear you here. Sorry I'm a little bit late, I had a few problems with the stream and I just needed to get everything sorted. As always, let me know if there are any problems with my audio. There we go, pause myself so that I can't hear myself. Right, okay, so this is going to be a quick stream tonight. We left last night's stream with the ability to open DirectX 12 into a window, and it basically, we haven't used it very much at the moment. We've just initialized it and we have gone from a pink window to a black window. So we've got our black window here, we're resetting here, and we are closing. Jim Ellen, you're telling me we've got a problem. What is the problem that you are referencing? Direct2D is going to be our interrupt UI layer over the top of Direct3D. So it just gives me the ability to have a very quick, simple UI internally in-game, and then we're going to use C# for our external editor and UIs. So as I say, what I wanted to do is I just wanted to carry on from yesterday. So let us open up this DirectX utilities. Not utilities, what am I on? Render window. And let's have a look to see what we need to do. Let's come down to our reset function. Now I mentioned yesterday that when we come to here, I'm going to put a special note here. So when we come to here, all of our previous loaded buffer objects must be deleted before this point. And this is just because if we don't delete, get rid of everything just like we've done here before we run our resize buffers, we are going to get errors. So what do we need for our DirectX, our Direct2D window to come on top of our Direct3D window? First thing we need is we're going to need a special item called a 11on12 interrupt. You still can't hear anything? I'm getting message to say that you can't hear anything, so let me know if that is the case, and I will look into my microphone. I think that's probably an old message though from when I was originally muted. Excellent, thank you. That's brilliant, Brandon. That is absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for that confirmation. Right, okay, so what do we need? We are going to need 3 items. We're going to need a DirectX 11on12 interrupt variable. We are going to need a Direct11 variable, and we are going to need our Direct2D variable. So let's just start by adding these off. So what do we need? First thing we're going to need is, the way that this is going to work is we are going to, first of all, load up DirectX 11. And we're going to use DirectX 11 to be able to host Direct2D. However, if we just to directly load up DirectX 11 and try and use it side by side, we'd have a few problems. So DirectX 12 actually comes with this variable here. And this is basically like we're going to load in... Interesting. We're going to load in this actual item here, and that is going to act as our DirectX 11 device, same as we have in our original DX Core, our DirectX 12 device. This is going to work as a DirectX 11 device, but it's just going to be able to work in its stead so it can work with DirectX 12. Now, I do need a few more include files in here to make this work. So let's come into here. First thing I'm going to add is Direct2D. Let's add our Direct11on12 device. And I'm going to add pics in there just for the sake of it. I'll have a quick look in here to see if there's anything else that I'm not using at this stage. I think The only thing else that I've got here that is not being used is DirectX 12, DirectX Math. I'm not sure if we're going to use it. Just going to add it in there anyway, just so that we don't need it again later. Now we've done that, we've got our 11 on 12 device. And as I say, this is going to be our DirectX 11 device. Now, one of the changes between DirectX 12 and DirectX 11 is that DirectX 11 comes with an item called a device context, and you can find a lot of your functions in the device context, whereas in DirectX 12 you would find that most of this you set up manually. So if we're going to create a DirectX 11 device, then we're going to need a DirectX 11 context as well. So this is just our ID3D 11 context, ID3D 12 on here, and then what I just like to do is any device context, I just like to call it device context, and then we just put our flag at the end. And that means if I'm looking through my code and I just really quickly, for example, want to do this, change the language there on my keyboard, I can find all my device contacts just by putting this, and then we can change that from 2D to 11. So yeah, that's just my personal preference on my naming convention, and obviously anything that is internal I always put the M in front of it. The next thing we're going to need is we are going to need our Direct2D device. So this is our Direct 11 device and our Direct 11 context. This is our 2D device, and as such we're going to need a 2D context. Right, okay, perfect. Yeah, I mean, DirectX 2D is just nice and easy. I've made the entire UIs, full graphical game UIs with Direct2D before, so it's easy. It's not actually needed, it really is not needed, because what you could do is just use a Direct3D layer with a shader that didn't have depth stencil on it. And then you could just run everything in boxes in Direct3D and make your own UI that way. But we're not going to do it like that. We're just going to use the Direct2D because it's a nice and easy way to do it. Let's come back to our reset class. Now we've put this little error message in here. We could initialize all of our Direct2D items outside of our reset. So we could come up to here and we could say create swap chain, create Direct2D, create Direct 11, etc, etc. However, what we're going to need to do is, before this point, we're going to need to delete it all again, and then we're going to need to create it all again after this point. So we might as well just add all of this code directly into our reset. I am going to start just here before we created our render targets. We remember as we were going through this, we would reset everything, we would resize the buffers, and then we would actually create the render targets themselves. So we're going to start from this section, and we're going to add in the extra things here. Let me find quickly the code that I'm supposed to be explaining. So the first thing we need to do, as I said, the first thing we need to do is create our DirectX 11 device. So let's create our DirectX 11, create DirectX 11. Right, okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an actual DirectX 11 device. As I said a moment ago, you can't run these side by side. We need to have an actual 11 on 12 device. But we're going to start by just invoking and creating, first of all, the actual DirectX 11 device. And we're going to do this like such. Here is our D3D 11 device. Here is our create DirectX 11 function. There is a different function for normally for create DirectX 11, but because we're using it on an 11 on 12 device, we use a specific function from the 11 on 12 device here. This is going to be our DirectX 12. This is going to be our DirectX 12 device. we have an extra flag here that is used for our flags. Remember when we were setting up our factory originally, we set up extra flags in our debug layer to tell it how to work. Well, we're going to need to do that for all of our devices as well. So there's going to be one for DirectX 11, there's going to be one for Direct2D. So let's just do one here, and then we'll move back into that in one moment. We're going to use I think I just picked up an enemy radar there. Let me know if you can hear the background sounds. I don't think it was coming through very quickly very well yesterday. We have one command queue. We are adding the command queue. We've got the remote device. We are making a PP pointer to this DirectX device here, and we are making a pointer to our DirectX 11 context or device context. So this is going to create our DirectX 11 device on 11 on 12. And then, just as we did before, as we're creating that as a DirectX 11 device, we need to actually then interrupt that over to being an 11 on 12. Okay, so we're going to take that device and we're going to reassert it onto here. I was a bit dubious about getting on the stream tonight. I have had a very long day and I'm not quite as awake as I have been over the last couple of days. But I really wanted to get this finished just so that we could move on to the next section. Now we have created our DirectX 11 device, we're going to want to create our Direct2D device. So let's come into here and let's do so. Before we do that, actually, we said we were going to add this DirectX flags in. So we need to come back up to, let's go to our DirectX core device. That's going to be in source. This is Ether. Here we go. Perfect. So let's just create another one of these in here. What did we call this? It is device flags 11. Device flags 11. And let's go back to where we were creating our debug layer. Here we go. This is our create debug layer. And let's just add a few extra sections in here. So m_device flags 11. And then we want add. That is what this means. There we go, and this just says we want on our DirectX 11 device to be able to add the debug layer as well. Now that's fine. We could move on to our Direct2D, but there is actually one more variable, as I said before, that we need to add. So let's just do that now quickly. That is going to be our 2D factory options, and I'm just going to add this in like this. That actually comes up as a struct, so we need to initialize it as a struct. And this is just D2D1 factory options. Again, this is just so that we can add a debug layer. And to add that, we just use this function here. M under factory options, debug level equals pretty much the same macro as here, and you can just copy and paste that in. So we have now just added our debug layer onto our DirectX 11 device and our Direct2D device. So let's move into actually adding our Direct2D device here. So create Direct2D. Now I spent a lot at the beginning of the episode saying that if we don't reset these things at the beginning before this time, then we're going to have issues. So let's just have a look to see a couple of things that we need to do just to reset these as we are going through. First thing I would like to do is I'm just going to make a little enter here. Both the DirectX 11 device and or context and our DirectX 2D context can both be flushed. So all of the data that they're storing is going to be removed, just like our command queue. So I'm going to put this here just with our other flush commands, just to make sure that that it is completely flushed before we're resetting everything. Only problem with this is if we were to run this before it's created which is, for example, on the first try, it will try and reset or flush something that doesn't actually exist yet. So we're just going to create a quick if m underscore device 11 or device context 11. If that exists, then we're going to flush it. So device context 11, and we're going to go flush. And again, that's just going to remove any data that we already have remaining in here. I've already put the direct context 2D into the header file. So let's just do the same here, going on the idea that we are definitely going to be using that in a moment. The next thing we're going to need to do is just down here is we're going to need to reset everything that we've just created. So what have we just created? Let's actually have a quick look. We have created an M11 on 12 device, so let's reset that. M11 on 12 device dot reset. And then we should just have our device contexts. So let's M underscore device context 11 dot reset. I'm going to do the same for 2D. This is exactly the same on both, so I'm just going to copy and paste that across and hit 2D. Is it difficult to go from DirectX 11 to DirectX 12? Yeah, it's a difference in low levels. Although, in general, I think no matter what graphics language you're using, OpenGL, Vulkan, DirectX 12 in many of its different versions, you spend a lot of time on theory. So yes, there are more steps in DirectX 12 to actually get things done. So for example, you're going to be writing 2 to 4 times the amount of code. But in general, it's still, you're still using vectors, you're still using shaders. It's still just general knowledge that you should be picking up from a book. And there's some great books. I think actually on the Discord there is some books linked on what we should get, and there's actually how to make a game engine in one book. There's a couple on the different graphics APIs, and in general just rendering in general. So the more general theory knowledge you can gain, the better you will be at tackling any of these actual graphics APIs. The only thing I'm going to do now quickly, I haven't even used it yet, but I'm going to use it in a moment, is just reset our device 2D. So this means we're about to create this, we're about to create this, etc. And we're just making sure that everything is removed before we get to this point. This variable does exist, it's just not being initialized. So I can use it because when it's not being, or reset it when it's not being initialized, but I can't actually use it. So you'll see this is a pointer, this is getting the actual information inside the com pointer, whereas this is actually resetting the com pointer itself. So I don't need to give the if statement up here. Yeah, Direct2D does indeed use Direct2D write for text, and we're actually going to be adding that in this episode. I think by the end of this episode, we're going to get our very simple "Hello World" coming up on the screen, and then we'll probably take it from there and leave it. Once we've got that rendering to the screen, and then in the next 8 weeks episode, what I think I'm going to do is focus more on a UI framework, so we can have text blocks, text boxes, canvases, etc., etc. Because going on the fact that we need to remove everything before the reset command, we also need to create a system in which this does it all for us in a really, really nice and easy way. So creating a system for that, I think, is going to be next week. And then my ultimate objective is to be able to have one screen that has a button on it that you can push to get to the next scene, and then vice versa, just so that we can create a system where you can swap scenes, and then we'll just start focusing on one. But I just want that system to be able to swap them, so that while we're building, we don't build something that eventually you just try and swap screen and everything crashes. I want to get that basic fundamental architecture along. That being said, I think it's probably about good time that we get on with it, I think is the best answer. We are going to need a device factory, a 2D device factory. So I'm just going to call this factory 2D. Generally, our factories create things. Remember from yesterday, our DXGI factory created our device and our swap chain. Well, you need a factory. excuse me, you need a device to be able to create things on D2D as well. Just like we had before, and I suppose I could have put this flag. It's not really a flag, but it's an options upstairs, but let's just do it anyway. This is a flag for our 2D device, and then we're going to want to create our 2D device. So this is our function for create. No, it's not the device, it's the factory. We're creating the factory. So it's D2D1 create factory. We're going to create our D2D factory on a single thread. We are going to give it the UID of. We're going to put a pointer into our factory options, and this is what we actually created a moment ago in our debug settings. And then we're going to put a I can't remember the name for this, an ampersand, into our factory 2D. And this is actually going to create our factory 2D. Now we've created our factory 2D, we can create a DXDGI device. Okay, so we are going to create a basic DXGI device, and we are going to invoke this on from 11 on 12. And then using that, we are going to create, so this is a bit like our DXGI factory that we created yesterday. We're going to use that to actually create our device on Direct2D. Okay, so this is our device. This, again, we're wrapped into a specific graphics card or a specific render unit. And we are going to use our DXGI device to actually initiate that. And because we have created a Direct2D device, we are also going to need a Direct2D device context. So let's add that in there as well. Okay. So that is everything we needed to create Direct2D. We have a DirectX 11 on 12 device, which is interoping onto a Direct 11 device, and we are using the device context 11 with that. We are then also in Create 2D. We are creating a Factory 2D. We are creating our device here, and then we are creating our device context. Now, trust me, these are all needed, okay, and you'll see why going along. But I think it's just easier if you just trust me that these are all needed, and instead of trying to explain what they all do before I'm actually using them. The next thing we need to do is we just need to add, I'm just going to copy and paste this in. This is a section from the 11 on 12, and it just creates our bitmap properties. It's just basically an options feature for DirectX 12, D2D, sorry. This is a direct copy and paste from the 11 on 12 code, apart from the fact that I made bitmap properties a variable. In the actual code, normally you would see that this is a local variable. However, I have actually made it a class variable in mine. So let's just grab that quickly, and let's just keep a record of that. As soon as I can find it, should be up here with, aha. Let's go back into here. Where did I put the other ones? Let's put this in here. No, we probably want this in here, don't we? Here we go. And we're keeping our bitmap properties. Let's have a look, see what this does. We are going to grab the desktop DPI, as in we are going to grab the resolution of the desktop. In my case, I think I'm using a 1920 by 1080p screen. We are then going to create our bitmap properties object. We are going to use that pixel format and make sure we are running at the correct screen size. Again, copied and pasted. Doesn't really... It's not really straightforward, so I don't really know what it does. Okay, so in here, in this section here yesterday, this is where we loop over and create our render targets. We've created our render target here, with render target view, and we have created our depth stencil. So I just want to add a few extras in here, okay, in between where we would offset the descriptor size, and we have added this. I am going to add some more. Okay, let's have a look here. First thing we're going to do is we are going to create some D3D 11 flags. Now, I'm not going to use this anywhere else in the engine, so I'm not going to make it a class variable. I'm just going to keep it as a local variable, but we want to create the flags of bind render targets. We are then going to create our wrapped render targets. The way this works is that Direct2D is going to run on our render targets. Okay, these are, for example, images that we create to go onto the screen. Our Direct2D layer needs to first go through a Direct11 interrupt and then needs to get into our Direct2D. And for that reasons we need both our render targets, a wrapped render targets, and then a render target 2D, and we need to create these in process. So let's start by just creating our wrapped render targets. And I apologize if I can't say that very well. We are using our 11 on 12 device, and we are going to create our wrapped resources. We are going to wrap them around our render targets. We're going to use these that we just created, which is our... Where did I put that? Put that in the wrong place. We use our D3D11 flags, which is our bind render target. We are going to start off in a render state, and we are going to move on to a present state, and we are going to be using and initializing our wrapped render targets, which we don't actually have at the moment, so I suppose it would be best if we added those. Now, this is the same here. Let's add... I'm going to add these at the bottom here. For a start, we're not using 12, we're using 11, and these should be called wrapped render targets. Render targets. So we've got our render targets, which is Direct3D. We've got our wrapped render target, which is Direct 12. We've got our wrapped render target, which is Direct 11, and then we have one more to add, which is our 2D render targets. And our 2D render targets looks like this, and it actually comes up with the class of bitmap. And then this one here is Direct2D. So although we're going to be only rendering on this one and this one, again, we have to run it through a Direct11, so we need this one in the middle. Right, okay, let's just put these together, just so that we know that this is for our UI. And let's get back to here. We have create our wrapped render targets, so the next thing we need to do is create our render targets 2D. We are going to start by creating a IDXGI surface, which is this here. We are going to use our wrapped render targets as our surface, which means we're going to be adding this onto here. And then we are going to be creating our bitmaps from our DXGI surface. Basically, we're going to be creating our render targets 2D. We are going to use the surface detail that we created here with our wrapped render targets. Then we're going to get that surface. We're going to use the bitmap properties that we created in the last section. This is up here. And we are going to initialize our render 2D. Perfect. That is, I believe, everything we need to set up Direct2D. So let's go back through that quickly here. Up this section here, we have reset everything that we're creating. 11 on 12 device context 11, context 2D, and device 2D. We have flushed our 11 on 12D context devices. One thing that we haven't done is up here we are resetting all of our render targets. So what we're going to need to do is we're actually going to need to reset all of the new resources that we just created as well. So let's just reset our wrapped render targets. Then let's reset our render 2D targets. And there's one more section to do. Let's have a look here. In this section here, we can see that we are using a function called create wrapped resources. Now, this means that we are actually adding these resources to the command queue. If we do not then take these back off of the command queue, we are going to have problems. And just by resetting all of the device and the items that we were actually creating, i.e. the M wrapped render targets, is not quite good enough to actually get it to do what we want it to do. So we actually need to use a reverse command. That was create wrapped resources, and we're actually going to need to use a command that is now remove or release wrapped resources. And this is just like a hard-coded way of removing these directly. So you'll see this one is release wrapped render resources. This one is, where are we? We are create wrapped resources, and this must be used in pairs. So we need to add it, we need to remove it. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. That being said, I think to start with, that is everything that we need to add Direct2D. So what I should be able to do now is I should be able to run this and resize the window. If I can't resize the window, something in this reset function has gone wrong and I haven't released all of the data correctly. So let's just have a look at that, see what it looks like right now. This is quite an easy one to fix. It's basically saying to me it doesn't have the libs added. And we added the libs in here. So let's have a look to see what we need just to get this working. I think we need quite a few extras in here. So let's just copy and paste this entire thing and add what we need. We need D2D1. D2D1. We're going to need D-white. Just like someone mentioned in the chat a moment ago, we're going to need D-white, so I'm just going to add it in right now. And we're going to need our D3D11. D3D11. Did I need anything else in here? D3D compiler, D2D, D-white, D11, D12. And this one is adding GUID in here as well, so don't know if we specifically need that, but I'm going to add it anyway. Let's come back to here. Now we've added the libraries for all of the items that we need. Let's run that again, see if it now works. Sorry about that, I've just realised I was on mute for that. So I'm getting an error here. It's coming up on my DirectX 2D. See if I can figure out why that is and what's happening. Yeah, resize. So this still appears to be our first show, our first resize. Comes to here, comes into here. Outputs. Interesting. There's a debug warning that I was meant to add in here, so let's just add that in here. I don't know if this is going to make the effect, but I know that I was meant to add it in here. So I've got a function here called suppress the D2D warning. I'm just going to add this directly into my core section. There we go, that suppresses my D2D warnings. Again, this is a copy and pasted code directly from the examples, so I'm just adding it in. Interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we're at a system here. We're at a point here where I've got two pieces of code that work exactly the same on both levels. One thing that I think is different on our code here, don't have conformance mode on my example code, so let's have a quick look, see if that will solve the problem. And if it does, that's really annoying. No, it doesn't. Wow. Don't you love it when you have one piece of code that works and one piece of code that doesn't, and they're exactly the same? Let's take my jacket off first of all and get into some deep coding to see if we can figure out why this is not working. Create shop phone. Create shop phone. So everything is correct here. Flush, reset everything down here. Absolutely nothing different at all from what I'm doing here to what I have been doing at other times. Makes no sense. Makes no sense at all. I agree. It could be. I definitely agree. It could be a simple mistype somewhere, but copied and pasted most of it, and I'm not getting any direct errors. I'm sure there's probably something that I'm missing somewhere. But at the moment, it's not even. How rather annoying was that? Is that? Let's see if I can just grab that and just run a quick Google on it, see if I can find this error message. Right, okay, I think I might know what the issue is. Let's have a look. Yeah, absolutely. I found the issue. That's because I initiated this DirectX 11 flag out for a 0, but we actually should be pre-initializing it with our D3D create device BGR A support, which is down here. Yeah, absolutely. What I did do, I did put it into Jupyter, and that's what came out. So all hail Jupyter, and I'm quite confident now to say that if I now do this, it should render. We should get a black screen because we haven't actually asked it to do anything yet. Drum roll, please. There we go. Right, okay. So it is working, it is rendering, and we can actually now move on to the actual part where we are looking at our render function. Thank you, Jupyter. All hail Jupyter is a absolute joke for anyone who's religious out. Okay. All hail our future overlord. What do we think about AI in general? Is it something that we're finding really useful? Is it more of a pain in the backside than it's worth? Or tell me about your experiences with AI. Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look at this render function quickly. This is a little bit of a mess. It's throwing everything into here. So let's just create ourselves 2 new functions here. It's not AI, it's a text predictor. I do one of my predictator. One of my favorite things for using Jupyter for is just to be able to put it into there and say, what do I name this function? What do I name this class? Because it's the old ongoing joke of I spent 3 hours making this class. It's like, really? You spent 3 hours making the class? Well, no, technically I spent 5 minutes making the class, but I spent 2 hours and 55 minutes trying to figure out what to name the thing. And I do think that's true in quite a lot. So I do use Jupyter just to help me name things. So I'm going to create 2 new functions here. One's going to be called Render2D, and the other one is going to be called Render3D. No? Well, we could call it Render3D. Render2D, but I'm actually going to call it Render UI. Render UI. Cache validation and renaming variables. Yeah, naming variables. I've had quite a few discussions with this recently from my brother. How should this function work? What should I name this? It really is just an art form. There is no perfect way to actually name something. There's no perfect structure for a program or an archive. You just really need to feel it from your guts. So. Right, let's put a few, let's feel it, start replacing some of these in here. So let's just go render 3D in here. Going to put this reset of our direct allocator and our command list down here. I'm going to grab all of this and put it into our render 3D section. So this is our transition from present to I'll tell you what, actually, I could probably put this outside of our render 3D as well. Just so we're changing our state from present to render target. Then with render 3D, which is basically making up all of our decisions. In render 3D, we can set our viewports, we can set our scissor rectangles, we can create, these are just creation functions. We can clear the render target to black, we can clear the depth stencil, and we can set that on here. And that's everything we need to do for our 3D. I'm doing this from memory, but let's start actually going on something I've got in front of me so that I know what I'm doing. The difference between this, when you're rendering a UI layer and when you're not rendering a UI layer, is we need to get rid of this, because by invoking the Direct2D layer, it will automatically take us from the render target to state %. And if we leave this here, we're going to get mass amounts of messages saying you were in the wrong state. So I'll leave this here as a commented, and maybe we'll go back over that in a moment just to see what it would look like if I didn't remove that. And obviously this part here is part of that code as well, so let's mute this out. Now in here, before we get to our present area, we are going to need to render our UI. So let's hit render UI. Just like any form of 2D UI, what we would generally do is we generally initialize the drawing functions with start draw. We draw everything that we need, and then we close it down with end draw. It's slightly more complicated than this, but with this, because we need to use our 11on12 interop layer, we need to grab access to our current wrapped render targets every time. So let me just copy and paste this in, and let's have a look to see what this looks like. Codium for an AI assistant. Kim, that's really good information, and I'm definitely going to check that out. Because, yeah, ChatGPT is good. Copilot is okay. I'm not a great fan from what I've seen, although I don't have it. And what I would really like is a GPT that was focused 100% on coding. So, yeah, definitely. I'll have a look at that. Thank you for the tip. Right, okay, so we have wrapped our resources. Again, you remember I said before we've had our add or create wrapped resources, and we needed to pair that with our removed wrapped resources function. Well, it's exactly the same here. We're going to use this one to acquire it, and because we're acquiring it, we need to get rid of it. There we go. So add, remove, and it's really going to be like this every single time. Add, remove, add, remove, add, remove. Perfect. Once we've removed that, we also are going to need to just flush the DirectX 11 context. So just put that in there, and there's a couple of comments in there. Happy from the 11on12. You can find most of this example online already. This entire code base that I've built is a mix between the MSDN examples, which gives you basic initialization, and the 11on12 demo. And then I've mixed it, because I wrote this week just so that we had something for this show. And I mixed it half with Frank's code. So we've got our depth stencil in there. We've got a more advanced way of doing our initializations. And I mixed it all together in a hodgepodge of a development. So, yeah, you can find most of this code online, but not exactly how I've done it. All hail Frank Luna. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think any of us would be here if we didn't have both his DirectX 11 and his DirectX 12 book. So this is a render function. Our render function acquires our wrapped render targets and then removes it later, but we'll do that in a moment. Acquires our wrapped render targets. We set that target onto our render targets 2D. We set our begin, and we set the transform just to the center of the screen. Think Frank is not human. Is there only one book for DirectX 12? I think there's 3. From the years of research I've looked for, I think there was 3. I think there was one by Frank Luna, which is the Godly book. There is a Asian, I want to say Chinese version of a DirectX 12 book, which if anyone can get hold of and translate, I'd love to see that. We have a book section on the Discord, so please let us know if anyone finds that. And I think I saw one else as well. other than that, you really are going on the idea of watching the YouTube channel, going on the MSDN, or going to Frank. The FPS book is in DirectX 9 is beautiful. For any budding coders, just go and read that book and learn. Is it relevant today? Not really. It doesn't really work. There's a few ways I would like to improve it, and it uses DirectX 9. But if you just really want to know how to make Counter Strike, back like it was back before, back when I was a teenager, then it's a great book because it really does tell you beginning end how to just make a little Counter Strike book, and in a really simple way as well, using Windows messaging, and it is absolutely. Yeah, Kim, I hope I answered that one as already. There's three DirectX books. One which is Frank, one which is Chinese, and the other one which I can't remember, but I think I've seen it. Then there is the engine programming book, and a few more as well. Uh, I've stopped here mainly because we are now pretty much to the end of our program. This is our end draw. This is our, we need to wrap that and we need to flush that. So if I play this again now, theoretically it should work. Again, theoretically. And then we can start to add our hello world. Yes, Roman general. I had figured out that you were a centurion. Yes. VIP in the house, although technically you're a council member these days. Right, okay, this is working. This is working. We're not displaying anything currently, but we are also, it's working, and we are able to actually resize the screen without it crashing, which is wonderful, which means that all that business I made about needing to reset everything at the beginning is starting to show off. And just out of curiosity, let's just see what happens if I don't add all of these in. Let's give an example. There we go. This works. This is absolutely fine. Try and resize, it crashes. And I can pretty much follow this example on every single one of these, which is why I made such a big point of the fact that this needs to be all removed, and this is why it's really good to, if we have a scene class, so that we can say we want to reset our renderer, please reset our entire scene, reset our renderer, and then reload our entire scene. And if we can do that with lists where it just goes down, 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 then it will be greatly beneficial. Right, okay, so I said this wouldn't be a very long stream tonight, so I think the only thing left to do now is we want to draw some text on the screen. And I'm going to start with some text. It's going to be the boringest thing in the world, but it will prove it works, and it will give us room for thought on how we're going to add our UI canvas. Draw text. Yeah, I'm the type of person that likes to have a book in my hand. I'd much rather read that than read a website. Yes, I did. Thank you very much, Hair Dingoes. See, this is the benefit of coding live. You actually get you actually get people to help you with your coding along the way. Where were we? We were in render and we were rendering some text. Let's have a look. Draw text layout. Bada-bam. What do we need? We need... Now, one of my preferences is to not use Hello World because I'm a big sci-fi fan, so I always use Hello Universe. Or should we have... Hello Mars? Draw text. Draw text. There we go. Hello Mars. Let's actually create... I would have been wondering why it crashed. I possibly could have wasted another 20 minutes on that here. Yeah, but I completely agree. Although going on the fact that I just did a big part on the fact of why it crashes, maybe I would have got it too. Yeah, absolutely love a good sci-fi series. Good old Clark Tech. And also some of the futurists online, Isaac Arthur and John Michael Goudier. That's some of my favourite things that I could just absolutely get lost with for hours. And if no one is subscribed to Isaac Arthur or John Michael Goudier, then I definitely suggest it. Well, I'm just using this as a text here, and I've actually created this as a static variable. And the reason I've done that is because if I want to, you have to designate the length of the text. So hello Mars is what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But because I don't want to have to actually calculate that out with every string, we can just use the count of function, and then I can just say I want the count of -1 because we start at 0, and then we can just get that information. We are going to need another couple of functions in here. We are going to need our text format, which you're going to need to create. We are going to need some form of text rectangle. So I'm just going to say the whole screen. I'm going to say the whole screen. Render target. Let's go render target size. There we go. That's just this is our render target size. It's just going to get the size of our actual render target 2D, which we're going to use for this, and our width and height. We're going to start at 0, 0, which will mean basically the full screen. And then we can just use this in our text rec. It needs to be a pointer to the actual memory. That means it's got the little ampersand in front of it for anyone who really is new. And then we need the color. So let's have a look. And then text brush and text format. And text format dot get. Now that's all very well and good, but that's not going to work because we don't have these variables. So let's go and create these now. First of all, I'm going to come into our render window section. This is not something that I would normally create in this section, and for me right now I'm breaking all of the rules, because what I'm actually doing is I'm putting an object inside of our renderer, and our renderer should just be able to be fed objects and render instead of actually initiating objects in our renderer. However, just for example code, just to show that this is working, to be removed, I'm going to do it in here, and then when we start working on our actual UI class, then we can start loading these things up inside what would be effectively a text label. In this case is what we're creating, and we'll actually create a separate class for the text label. We need our text brush and our text format. The text brush is a D2D solid color brush. This one is going to need to be reset, so this one needs to be reset. The text format doesn't need to be reset. I think mainly because this one is a background piece of information, whereas the text brush is actually physically used in the rendering process, and therefore that reason the m_text brush needs to be removed. And the other thing we're going to need to do I think it's the second time someone has mentioned creating this all into static variables, and I was really trying my hardest to not make anything static. Mainly because at this stage I don't need to, and I think what I'm going to do is I'll just create an element class, then create a UI class, and then anything that I'm using can just piggyback off of our element class, and then I can have something that says it is shutting down UI, circle through all elements in a list, which could be your text box, your link thing, and reset. And then when I can also do the same for render. Take all elements in list, render, and then I can have the render commands directly inside the actual classes themselves. So yeah, there's lots of different ways we can do it, but I'm trying my hardest to not make things static. I feel it's kind of cheating. Static variables suck. No, I like the idea. Let's not be too harsh. I like the idea. I don't think it's needed. And again, I've got most of this code already written up in front of me. So yeah. One thing that we are going to need to do is create and use our dwrite device. So let's come back to where we were creating. First of all, let's just go in here. Where did I put all our other devices? In here? Yeah, let's create a dwrite device. Now this is a dwrite factory. I could write dwrite factory, but it just means I'd have to write more. So I just put it simply as dwrite. I think everyone's going to know what direct is. I would love to have see this conversation being had on the Discord as well. I mean, feel free to keep going while I'm chatting, but introspective on the Discord. Why do static variables suck? And I'm not saying they do. It's not my opinion. I didn't want to use them. I'm not saying they suck, but yeah, I think it would be an interesting conversation. Right, okay, so we added our dwrite variable. Perfect. We need to initialize that. Let's come back to our reset code. We just need to add a new one here. Let's find where that is. It's undefined. Why is it undefined? Is it because I didn't add dwrite in here? I think it might be. dwrite. And moment of truth. Am I using dwrite 1 for this? Yes, yes I am. So okay, that should be absolutely fine. Yeah, yeah, Kim, we've got a Discord. We've got Discord, quite a few people. I'll grab you a link and I'll put it onto the chat. I'm really bad. Every day I put this on the chat and I keep on forgetting to actually put it in the actual. I don't need to sign into chat. I own this. Ta-da! One Discord channel. I should get a moderator to do that. You know what I should have? I should have a council member that can do these things for me. Only joking, Sen. Right, okay, we added dwrite. We're adding dwrite in here. We created our dwrite create factory. Excellent. Let's just come down to the bottom of here and let's just create these things that we have just initialized. And then what we're also going to need to do, like I said, we need to be really over the top and really good because we just created our text brush. We need to reset that. Don't reset that, it's going to crash. I'd love to pin it to the chat, but I don't know how to do that. Absolutely. I mean, I came into the idea that I wanted to start doing some streaming. I knew it wasn't going to be perfect at first because I don't have an amazing amount of experience with this. I don't have the fallback of having Adobe Adobe Premiere Pro to be able to fall back on to make all the videos pretty. I didn't have any way to regulate the audio, so this is all new. But if you've got any of these advices or suggestions, please feel free to just throw them at me, especially in the Discord. IMGUI. So even the engine that me and the High Council are making together and things like that, it's been suggested that we should use IMGI. And every time anyone mentions the word IMGI, I kind of just don't want to use IMGI. I have nothing against it. It just looks horrible. I am very chromophobic, which is has a phobia of colours. So unfortunately, I've seen IMGUI in quite a few engines, and it always looks horrible. I know there's a wrapper. I know you can change it. So make it look like you want it to, but I don't need to, and that's one of my main things. If I wanted to, I could write a windowing UI directly in Win32. It wouldn't be pretty, but I could. If I need an internal UI, I could use Direct2D. So I've never really needed to do that. And I did look into UWP, Win UI, UWP, XAML the other day, just to see if maybe I didn't need it in C#. But again, I think I've explained this in every episode so far. It relies on WinRT, which means you end up with functions that take up your entire screen, because there's 15 different namespaces behind half the functions you need to use. None of them are particularly in a naming pattern that I like. Yeah, again, I don't disagree with you on the IMGI. I don't like it, and I have never needed to force myself to like it and get comfortable with it. However, I do know plenty of people, the journo, etc., is very confident in. This is C++, but you'll see up here, I'm actually building my editor in C#, so we're gonna play around with the two. In the background, while I've been chatting, I've just added this in. This is going to create our solid brush. Anyone in the chat wants to pick a color, and we can add that color. So yeah, just a white brush at the moment. White brush, black background. Create text format, weight normal, style normal, stretch normal, size 50. Font place for Dana. Let's go. Arial. Purple, like it. Purple is the most expensive colour in the world. Comes from Crete, made from oyster shells, and should be the colour used by any emperor of the Roman Republic. Set text alignment center, paragraph center. So we're just creating this quickly because this is everything that we should need to then go down to our render command. That's all working. I hit play. Yeah, absolutely. Again, I could do it in Win32. I have a program that actually got lost through the websites being put down, but I managed to Wayback Machine it, and it's a Win32 application with full window docking capabilities, with full UI capabilities, and it comes all in C++ and Win32, and oh my god, it's beautiful. And I've got it, and I had originally thought to myself that I was going to use that as a basis to rewrite my entire own Windows platforming service, but that's a lot of work, so I never actually got round to it, although I do still have that Wayback code, which is absolutely amazing. I've got a folder on my PC called samples, and I literally have about 2,000 projects in there. Not mine, that's not my personal projects, that's all of the example projects, and that really is just going through them. You learn so much, even if I've been coding for 15 coming up 20 years now, and you can still just read a code base. Oh look, I didn't even think of that. So I'm waffling. Our window is working. You'll notice that no matter what we do, this is always at 50, and that is because we were really good and really over the top with our resize command earlier. If you were to try and resize the 11 on 12, the 11 on 12 window, you wouldn't get this this resized text, because it doesn't actually resize the window or use that resize buffer. So yeah, so this is just a little bit extra, and if you want to put it on that resize, remember you need to remove all of the variables first. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, we now have a DirectX renderer. It's not rendering anything at the moment, but it's working and it is fully resettable, meaning, again, for anyone, if anyone didn't catch yesterday's stream, what we need to do is we will need to reset the renderer every time we change scene. Every time we add items, lights, materials, everything like that. If we want to change scene, we need to wipe out everything in the scene and we will need to reset the scene. So it's really important for us to get this sort of scene architecture that we had a reset command. So it looks quite boring at the moment. We have a basic UI, we have a black window, but I'm quite excited. I think this is a good basic. This is a basic. It's a basic platform, and I'm looking quite forward to actually continuing it off. One thing that I could just quickly do. Let's just try this. So we were talking about our editor, and the fact that we're talking about our editor and the fact that we're making it in C#. But theoretically, now I've done that, I should be able to load this up. So we need to go into our DLL, go into our interop, add our graphic window, render window, change everything from here to graphics, render window, render window. That's going to be my non-existent wife's name in a few years. This one doesn't have a parent. Interesting. So we need to follow out. This my main.cpp doesn't actually do anything. I threw it in the engine file, so. Yeah, what the question is, the question of why don't you just put everything in one page? Why do you keep on splitting everything up? Has been asked to me multiple times, and I do think it's maybe something that we as developers also have a little subconscious tick on. Must split everything up. Must keep splitting everything up. Must segment. Right, okay, so I want to make this work in our editor, which is what I'm doing right now. And in our window function, I have a silent HWND here called parents. We're going to make this null. Equals null. There we go. And then we're just going to pass this into a window. Which means I now should be able to come back to our interrupt.cpp.h. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. What do we need? We need initialize under underscore editor game window. Initialize. What I'll probably do here is I can probably put up our application. This is just extra work, guys. This hasn't been planned. This is just me mucking around for the hell of it. So, application. That's not the one I want. I want engine. In our engine, we create, we initialize, and we update. We create, we initialize, and we update. Now, honestly, I haven't tested this far enough to know if this is going to work. So there's a high chance that this is going to be an absolute disaster. Let's just build this. And if this for any reason doesn't work, why am I defining DOL export with the extern C? I don't know. That's because that's the best way to make a DOL expert work like this. I don't generally use it like this when I'm not doing it on a C# implementation. It's only when I want to specifically make this so it's readable by C# do I make that like that. Don't need the extern C. Interesting. So that's not rendering, is it? Ah. No, I did that wrong, didn't I? Yeah, it's not currently rendering. I'm not sure why. As I say, this was only meant to be an extra, little bit extra to see if I could get that working. It's not, so I'll have a look at that offline. We'll come back. We'll try and get our editor working and loading up correctly on a different time. The main thing I wanted to do today was get the UI sorted, and that is done. So I think we are going to call it there for tonight. I am going to have a play around on my own, just see if I can get us a basic template for our UI and our scene classes. And then I think next week now, we are going to be working on our UI. Tomorrow I have a coding competition. It is going to be a 2-day competition, worldwide competition that I am entering in for Unleash the Geek. So everyone wish me luck, and if we do really well, I'll give you updates on the Discord channel. And for anyone who wishes to continue this conversation, I will be available on there for a little while as well. It'll be great to see you there. Again, I'll just throw that in there if I can. Oh, I can't. Let's see if I can grab it from Discord. Thank you very much, guys. As I say, I will put a little bit of a post up after the competition, letting everyone know how it went. And yeah, I look forward to seeing everyone next week. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Goodbye.